Thank you and welcome to our briefing meeting this morning. My name is Kyle Stevens. I'm chairman of the board for this year. The date is Thursday, May 5th, 2022. It's 10 a.m. And we would like to welcome board members that are here. Charles Holmgren, Wayne Anderson, Norm Johnson, Blaine Ibsen, Juliet Tennert, myself, Kyle Stevens. We're still waiting for Randy Crozier, and I think Jim Lemon was going to join us virtually today, but don't see him online yet. So again, welcome. We appreciate everyone being here, appreciate staff and for their time and effort in putting the information together for the board meeting, and look forward to having further discussion on those items as we go throughout the day. It's interesting. There hasn't been much information in the news of late regarding water-related issues. I joke about that because it seems like there's one or two articles every day, either in the printed paper or news or social media, and I guess that's called job security for division staff and others, because we are facing some critical junctures in the water field. Anyway, welcome. Candace, I'll let you go ahead and introduce staff that are present and go from there.
Great, thank you. With us today, we have Joel Williams, Shalane DiBernardi, Shannon Clow, who's taking our minutes. Thank you, Shannon. Aaron Austin, Marisa Egbert, and Josh Zimmerman. And behind the curtain, and Tom Cox. Thank you. He was hiding behind Joel. And behind the curtain, we have Paul Gedge and Carmen McDonald, and thank them for making it possible to stream this over YouTube.
Okay, well, again, thank you and welcome. And I think Candace will have some new hires to introduce later on in our agenda this morning. So with that, we will go ahead and go through the board meeting agenda and have any discussion that is necessary relative to those items that are on the agenda today.
Jim is trying to get on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then have we heard from whether or not Randy is in process or? Okay. All right, we'll proceed ahead then. Approval of minutes for the board meeting that was held on March 23rd. Briefing and board meeting was held on March 23rd down in St. George in conjunction with the Water Users Conference. Corrections or changes that need to be noted for the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple, three minor little typos I got with Shannon, and she's got them taken care of.
Mr. Chairman, I also had some minor edits. Since I was mentored by Bob Bessie, I have been on this board long enough, I couldn't pass up that opportunity, but there was nothing of substance that was that needs to be changed, just some typos.
Okay, and you've made note.
Yeah, and I'll hand those over to her right now.
Okay, and I likewise had a couple, maybe some of those are the same that Blaine and Charles have. And I've already called that to the attention of Shannon as well. And Shannon, thank you for the detailed minutes and in your new role as executive secretary to, or whatever your title is.
Yes.
Administrative assistant.
Yeah, and I'm happy to make that announcement now.
Oh,
so
sorry.
as you all
jumped
know,
the gun.
you're good. I have a couple I can make right now. So as you all know, Lindsay Russell resigned, and we opened the administrative assistant position, and we're really grateful to have Shannon apply and accept the job offer. So we're excited that she'll work closely with the board and help do what Lindsay did before with the board minutes and board book and everything like that. And we'll coordinate all travel, all those type of things. So she is your go-to person on that. Welcome, Shannon. One other quick announcement is we did open the position of assistant director over the development branch after Joel had accepted the deputy director position, and Shalane DiBernardi accepted that position. So she is our new assistant director over the development branch. So there's a couple of updates for you.
Well, thank you, and congratulations to both Shannon and Shalane, and look forward to working with you in those positions. Well, with that, let's go ahead and go through the agenda items.
One sec.
Okay,
Just want to let you know that we're going to be calling Jim into the meeting, so it is going to interrupt you for a second, but we're going to call him in, so.
okay.
Oh, do I? Okay. I may need to do it.
Sorry, we
Just
haven't
one
done this
sec.
for a while.
It's been interesting the past 2 years as we've had opportunity to become acquainted with Zoom, Google Meets, whatever format is being used. It's been an educational process for all of us to learn that. So thank you. I appreciate that opportunity that gives those and have difficulty making it the meetings can still participate. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and go through the agenda. We've talked about the minutes, and we'll act on those in the board meeting. We'll have an updated water supply report from Jordan Clayton in the meeting. And so let's go through. The first item there is RC 023, Consolidated Sevier Bridge.
Your message, and I will call you back.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished
Go
recording,
ahead,
you may
Wall.
hang up or press 1 for more options.
Let's wait and see if they can get the.
Kyle, I'd like to do a little before Tom.
Oh.
Phone call comes in from like New York.
Oh, so yeah, I would answer that.
Well, let's go ahead while they're working on that. Blaine, this is the project is in your area. If you have some information you want to share prior to Tom, go ahead.
Okay, this project is a relatively big project dollar-wise. It's also a big project. It's for Sevier Bridge Reservoir, which is the largest privately owned reservoir in the state of Utah, and it's an important reservoir on the Sevier River system. Back in the early 2000s, they had phase 1 of improvements that needed to be done in order to meet the new dam safety standards. They did part of those. There wasn't enough funding available in that. They were completed, I believe, in 2004, Tom, the phase 1 was. Phase two is the spillway and some downstream embankment issues that Tom will have more details on, but they've been waiting until funding became available to do this. The companies that own Sevier Bridge, there's 5 irrigation companies, the local irrigation companies down in Millard County, western Millard County. 4 out of the 5 companies just finished a project on DMAD Reservoir, and that one has unique thing in that it came in 9 months ahead of schedule and $4 or $5 million under budget. When have we heard that? And all of that. Ames Construction was the contractor, and they did a bang up job. They did great. We're hoping that Sevier Bridge will do the same. It's a spillway project and also downstream embankment. Right now, the preliminary estimates are $21-22 million, something like in that range. There's only $19 million available funding total and available for the grant portion of it. These irrigation companies have some commitments, some things that are already like the gates. There's a lead time on them. They need the funding, even if it's only the 19 million, to be able to take care of some of those things that have to be done. If it doesn't come in under budget at some future time, they'll come back and ask, need some more assistance, but they felt like they needed to do this. Just so you're aware, I am a stockholder in each of those 5 companies, and so I will recluse myself from making any motions or doing any voting. So when the time comes, I would appreciate it if somebody would take that.
Norm, would you be willing to make a motion in lieu of Blaine making that for that particular project? Okay, with that,
And I just want to publicly acknowledge Tom. Tom has been so wonderful to work with on this, and the folks down there really appreciate you, Tom, and I do. Thanks for all of your efforts on this, Tom.
Tom, before you get started, I'll just make note, Jim, I believe you're on. Jim Lemon,
Yes, I'm on.
welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks to Marisa for getting me connected. I couldn't seem to do it on my own.
Okay, thank you. So Tom, we'll go ahead and turn the time to you.
Blaine did a good job in the overall summary. I don't want to get him sticker shock.
I think your mic.
It's just quiet, I think.
Oh, it's quiet. Closer.
The green light is on.
The green light's on.
There you go.
Is this better? Okay. Shouldn't be so tall. I don't want to give Blaine sticker shock, but the cost estimate that I got yesterday was 27.25 million.
I hadn't heard that before. Wow. I believe it though, with
Wow.
like materials and stuff.
But there's frustration because I think the engineer is saying that 3 million of that increase is because of something that the Office of Dam Safety wants to include. Of course, prices have gone up. Construction materials are higher, labor's higher, and this cost estimate has a hefty contingency, 5 million, 25% of the construction cost. So like Blaine was saying, hopefully once bids are opened, that'll be lower. And hopefully we'll do like DMAD, and on DMAD, there was $100,000 in change orders. And on a $13 million project, that is incredible. So hopefully do the same thing on Sevier Bridge. Like Blaine mentioned, right now we only have $17.1 million in grant money available. So that's all we can commit right now. And they do need the funds right now to finish engineering and the prepayments on those spillway gates. So they do need that right now. So the plan would be today for the board to commit the $17.1 million in grant money and $1.9 million in loan money from the C&D fund at 0.1% interest, giving them 15 years to pay it back, which is 5 years longer than DMAD, but it's a more costly project. And the plan would be to, after bids are opened, and hopefully the end of June, the first part of July, to reevaluate and see where things are. The grant money plus the loan money that you'd be committing today should be enough to complete the spillway portion, which is the most important part, because the capacity of the spillway at DMAD was based on what was being proposed at Sevier Bridge. So their DMAD is downstream of Sevier Bridge. So it's important to get at least that part done. So they work in conjunction in their operations. So we anticipate August, September meetings sometime in that area for them to come back. I don't think the bid prices, even with good bids, will be low enough that the 19 million will cover everything. So we need to be creative in how we fund the rest, or either break the spillway and the embankment portions, separate them into 2 different phases, which we don't want to do. We don't want to do that. Dam safety doesn't want to do that. The company doesn't want to do that because it makes it even more expensive. So we may have to do like the board did on Millsite Dam, where we give a temporary loan for the company to cover those costs until the dam safety grants are available. Just want you to be aware of that, that what you're doing today is just first step so they can keep going. The company is getting frustrated about their rising costs. I don't know if they'll express that. And I don't think they'll be asking for a higher cost share percentage of grant money like they did on DMAD, because they realize the situation and that we're in. But they, of course, they'd always like more grant money if it's available. So, don't know if you have any questions or anything.
Along with that, I have had extensive visits, and I guess I'll be more surprised than anybody if they come asking for more than that. I've tried to impress upon them, and I think they understand. They're not going to be coming today saying, "Hey, we'd like 95%,"
Right.
today like they did last time. So hopefully.
I talked to Andy Nickel, the president, yesterday, and he didn't indicate they'd be asking for anything different. So unless something happened overnight, we shouldn't expect anything. And just to throw one more twist in, the Office of Dam Safety scheduled all their dam inspections down there today. So Andy's going to have to work out where he's going to be, whether he's in the inspection or in this meeting, or if he can be here right at 1 o'clock. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Tom, I have a question relative to the funding scenario that you brought up. I guess this is a question to you and the division. You made reference to the fact that could do some creative financing or funding similar to what was done with Millsite. And I'm not personally not familiar with how that worked out. But my question is, will the division have the ability and flexibility to do that if it's necessary looking into the future for that type of a funding scenario?
I think we will. Based on the new cost estimate, we would need $24.5 million in grant to cover 90%. Like you said, we only have 17.1 million right now, so we would need another 7.4 million or so, which is almost 2 years worth of our normal annual appropriation for dam safety. So we'd have to string that out. We have other projects in line we need to fund. So we may give them the 7.4 million extra in loan money. And then when that dam safety grant is available, the board will commit that, and we would use that grant money to pay down the extra loan amount that they took on.
Okay, and I guess that was the point that I was intending to ask about with the loan money. Is that 0% loan money, and where does that funding source come from?
It will be from the C&D fund. So we're giving them a 0.1% interest rate.
Okay.
About as close to zero as you can get, but we're required to charge interest out of the C&D fund. So that's basically $1,000 worth of interest on every $1 million they have to borrow.
And has that scenario been discussed with them, and so they are aware of that being a potential in order for the project to move forward?
They're aware of that. They still need to run that past their boards, of course, before they would approve that. But they're just as anxious to get this project over with as anyone else. So I think they'd be agreeable to do that.
And what is the projected timeline for construction? If that was there, I guess I missed it.
Start in July, August.
Right. They're working things out with dam safety on the embankment part. So the bid opening date is being pushed back to about, I think, the first part of July. So the construction would start end of July into August. And they would give them a year and a half or so to get the project done. On DMAD, the contractor, like Blaine mentioned, he got it done in one season. They didn't have to worry about this year's runoff and irrigation season because it was finished. So if the contractor gets that, it can work with that schedule. They can get it done probably in a year. As far as funding goes, it may be well to have them extended. But
Okay. And is this Sevier Bridge, is it the one that's also referred to Yuba?
it's
Okay.
Cuba Reservoir, but the
Okay, that's what
Sevier Bridge.
I kind of thought that was the case, but I didn't know for sure. So any other questions on this project? Okay, thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know, we recognize that our dam safety funds are limited and Tom is very good about bringing the information to us, and we are looking at adding a building block for our dam safety funds. Granted, there's no guarantees on getting that, but we will make the request because the need is out there.
Okay. Thank you. And just note, we've also heard from Randy Crozier. He's trying to join virtually as well. Not going to be able to attend in person today, so they're working to get him connected. Okay, we'll go to the next agenda item then, and that is special items RE 446 Provo River Water Users Reauthorization. Wayne, this is in your area, and it looks like Tom, you're the project manager. So Wayne, if you
Just to comment, they're not looking for committal of funds today. But as we met with them, I suggested that maybe they come a month before they want those funds and talk with the board and update us and give us a plan of what's going on and let everybody know before they come to ask for those committal of funds. So this is a situation where they're going to be here to answer questions, do whatever they need to prep us for next month's meeting. So, Tom?
Right. It's another case where construction probably won't start for a while, but they need funds right now to finish engineering and purchase materials. And their local cost share, they've used all of their money, and so they need to turn to the board for that. That being said, them being an association, we will need to bond with them. So it's not a simple purchase agreement, and you can demand bonds. So if you look at the cost sharing, get to it here. Their project cost has gone up also a little bit from 60 million to 100 million. So
a little bit. Okay.
that's partly because of Deer Creek. Oh, this is about Deer Creek Reservoir. They're redoing the intake structure and refurbishing the gates. And they're also proposing at this time to include an outlet bypass intake and pipeline. The original plan was to just use pumps to keep the water flowing while they were working on the outlet. But they were thinking that why spend $10 million on temporary pumps to keep the water flowing when you can spend 20 million, put something permanent in that they can use. So that's they're including a permanent bypass pipeline, which boosts the price up. It is a federal project, so they're under federal regulations, and they need to get approval by the feds on what they do there. And so they weren't able to do some of the cost-cutting measures that they thought they were going to get away with. So that's another reason why the price has gone up, and just the cost of materials and labor, like we mentioned before, has increased the cost up to $100 million. This is an estimate for today. They're anticipating another revised cost estimate in August, so who knows what that will be. But that's part of the reason why we're coming before the board today, just so the board is aware of the change in the the cost sharing. And we thought that since it was such a big difference, it warranted a reauthorization of the project, even though this project scope really hasn't changed that much. So if you look, we're proposing that our cost share be 65 million. And that is our number. We thought we needed to set a limit on it based on the needs on the draw on the C&D fund. I'm not sure if Joel is going to go over the cost balances in the C&D fund later, but so that 65 million is purely our number. And if you look at the cost share, that leaves $11 million that they need to find somewhere else. They're planning on applying for ARPA funds. They did through the legislature last session. They were denied those funds because it was suggested they go to water resources first. I think it may help their cause if we say we can only give them this much. Maybe legislature would be amenable to giving them some grant money in the future. This project will probably take 3 years to build, so a couple legislative sessions that they can apply. And they're also, as an option, they can apply for to the Division of Drinking Water. When they first came to the board, they had this dual applications, one to us and one to drinking water for the full amount. And we said, well, we can fund this much. So there is a good option that they could go to the Division of Drinking Water for some extra. And they're also applying for some other federal grants that they haven't heard the results on those yet. So it may be that once construction is going and they'll still be short, that they will either need to go to the Division of Drinking Water and have a bond through them, or come back to this board and have a second bond with us to cover the rest of the costs. We're, as far as the repayment terms, this will be 1% interest over 35 years. The board originally authorized 35 years repayment period in the 1%. So that will stay the same. Any questions the board has on this project?
Well, I don't necessarily have a question on this project, but you mentioned that they had sought approval for ARPA funding this year at the legislature, but the legislature denied them, request or suggest they come back to the board. But they will intend to go back to the ARPA or to the legislature next year. I guess my question is, did the legislature hold ARPA funding in reserve that hasn't been fully allocated yet? And would that ARPA funding still have, that ARPA funding would still have the same use requirements to be committed by 2024 and spent by 2026? So how does that all play into the scenario of what they're thinking about?
I can just kind of surmise that they would have the opportunity in the February of the next legislature of 2023 to apply, and also in 2024 if they needed to, and that they could get that contracted prior to December of 2024, which is when it has to be contracted. And their plan is to have the project finished by 2025, early 2026, which is before the cutoff date of the need to use the ARPA funds, which is the end of 2026.
Okay, but the bigger question is, did the legislature hold ARPA funds back in reserve that they didn't commit?
Are there funds to apply for even?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. My understanding is that they have committed the bulk of them. I'm gonna verify in between our meetings to make sure that that's accurate, that there may be some available still. I believe there's some still out there, but I don't know that 100%, so I'll verify that.
Well, I would just hate to see them, operating under that premise that there is money out there that they can go for, and then come to find out that there's not. Then, what kind of a predicament does that, put them in?
They do have other options. They have applied for other federal grants and loan money. as well as they have the option of the Division of Drinking Water too.
Okay,
If they don't get ARPA funds, it won't kill the project.
okay. Thank you. Any other questions then or comments? Blaine?
I have one just generic question. You mentioned that with that new bypass, the temporary bypass was just going to be for construction, and they decided, well, why don't we just spend more and get the other? Do they plan on using the permanent bypass on a regular basis? In the write-up, it talks about with DO levels and quality of the water and all that. Are they going to use that? Have they got a plan in place that you're aware of yet, Tom?
I think they're planning on using that. The original, one of the options was to modify the intake structure so they could draw from different levels.
Yeah.
I think they've abandoned that. They're just going to still modify the intake somewhat, but the bypass will be at a different level so they can use that to draw water from different levels of the reservoir to water quality.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Tom. We'll look forward to having that discussed further in the board meeting. Okay, let's move to the next agenda item then, and that is special item withdrawal report. In fact, I think the next three are all withdrawals, but RE 448 Centerfield City. The project manager is Jaqueline Pacheco. She's not here, so
No,
Elaine.
none of these withdrawals will need a presentation. You can act on all three at once if you want. Have one motion to withdraw these three projects and call it good.
Mr. Chairman, 2 out of the 3 in my area, I would be happy to make that motion.
Okay. I have a question on the first one, Centerfield City. I noticed in just the write-up there that they had sought funding for installation of secondary and irrigation meters within the city, but it was not well received by the residents. My question is, with the passage of House Bill 242 and the requirement for secondary metering, does that?
You got to remember Centerfield has maybe 150 people in it, population wise.
Right, but doesn't that still extend to smaller communities?
Yeah, it
does.
actually does.
Not right now, it's down the road.
Well, the requirement is not until January of 2030 when everyone has to be metered. And I think they've stated that they might look into applying for grant funds. But I think right now they just decided we're not going to pursue this. And
Right.
well,
Part of my understanding, some of the irrigators that were using more didn't want to be metered.
right, which is why the city wanted meters. But
Okay,
And I think that's actually part of the problem we may have with some systems is when you have a system that irrigates not just lawns and gardens, but also provides to farmers, you are going to have some contention there. So,
well, the division will have fun working that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions on those three? And is that the decision of the board to go ahead and consider them all as a group? Okay. So Blaine, you'll go ahead and make that motion to consider those. Okay, the next one is an application summary, City of South Salt Lake. It is RE 458. Juliet, this is in your area. And again, Jaqueline's the project manager, but
Yeah, I think we're working on getting a meeting scheduled for that one, so we're just starting it.
so this is just an information item.
absolutely. Just information for you, no action.
Big ticket item.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I got to get back to the agenda here. Well, the next item then is the transparent water billing grants update. Anything we need to mention at this point?
Well, Josh is here. He's
Josh, go ahead and come forward. We would not deny you the opportunity to say something.
Will you turn it on? It's not turned on. Push the button. The button? There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Range Chairperson, members of the board. One small correction that I think is worth making is that in the format that I used to get this to you, when you look underneath Clinton City and West Point City, you'll see that Davis and Weaver Canal Company is only under West Point. It should be under Clinton City as well.
Oh.
The way these grants are, how we order them is that we have the cities as the primary applicant, but Davis and Weaver Canal Company is a co-applicant on these, and in nearly every step of the way, they are just as important as the primary applicants. And my intent was to get Davis and Weaver listed formally on this to acknowledge their contributions. So I do think that is an oversight and that I made, and that's worth correcting. Other than that, I can see you at 1 o'clock and go from there.
Any questions from the board to Josh on this particular item? Okay, if not, we'll look forward to further discussion in the board meeting then. Thank you. Next item is Riverdale Development Planning Report.
Morning. So it'll be really simple. 2 properties that we closed on, and we are not buying any more houses. So, that's what Candace told me. And I wholeheartedly agree with her on that. So one is a house today. I just want to say, yesterday I made an appointment, and the only time it could be was at noon. If I don't make it back because Shalane doesn't have enough positions, jobs, if I'm not here, she will present for me. That's what she said. So sticking with that. Other than that, we're just continuing on right-of-way acquisition from willing sellers.
The fact that you're not buying any more houses, does that mean there's not any to buy, or?
Oh, sure there's some to buy, but quite frankly, at appraised value, we probably wouldn't get any anyway. But we're, undeveloped land is what we're worried about when the project is 3 decades out. Yeah. It's really hard to maintain a home for that long. Yeah. I don't want to get in the remodeling business. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. And we'll make note that Randy Crozier has joined us. Thank you, Randy. Glad to have you with us. We'd rather see you in person, but it's good to see your face virtually. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, I just too many irons in the fire. So
Well,
anyway,
we're glad to have you.
Okay.
Glad to have you with us. Thank you.
Sorry I'm late. Anyway, good to be with you. Thanks.
Okay, next item is Lake Powell pipeline update. Anything to discuss at this point or
Nope, Eric just said he'd be here this afternoon.
board meeting? Okay. All right, well, that concludes the agenda items that are on the board agenda today. So we'll now turn the time to Candace for information to the board.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. And I first got to say happy Cinco de Mayo. Looking forward to tacos. Our first item is to have Shalane DiBernardi present the status of funds for us.
And if it's okay, I'll do it over here. don't feel the need to be on camera. So I will say that I'm glad as we look at these numbers that it's May, and so we're nearing the end of a fiscal year, because technically they don't look all that great. As you look at the bottom, we're in the hole on several of them. But of course, we're not going to spend all that money in the next 2 months. So we're actually still doing okay, still letting people know we're accepting applications. We did not prepare a sheet for you yet for the $250 million secondary meter grants, because we aren't asking you to consider handing any of that out yet. But come next fiscal year, we'll have that added to the status of funds. As you can see, we have updated this with what the requests are today for Sevier Bridge and Provo River. And so, yeah, it's the C&D fund in particular is looking way in the red. But as you'll recall, it's been discussed before, July 1st will be the last payment on the board's recapitalization bonds. And then the money that's been sitting in that account to hold for those payments will be transferred back to the C&D fund. So come July 1, this balance will look a whole lot better. Are there any questions from the board?
I had a question on a couple of them, again, on the C&D fund, just looking at the dates
Mhm.
of some of those projects being authorized.
Yes.
One, Settlement Canyon in 2008. Another one, Weber Basin Phase 5 in 2007. I just wondered what the status of those, where they've been authorized. Again, I don't recall what the policy of the board is as to how long they can sit in that authorized category
Right.
with not.
Right. And at this point, if they were to, they have, some of these older ones have let us know they still do intend to come to the board at some point. Some of them that are on here, we think have decided maybe not to pursue this next phase, or have gotten funds elsewhere to fund it. So we are working, I've worked with the project managers to try to get some of these resolved. We can't remove them without an official withdrawal. If these older ones wanted funds at this point, we'd make them reauthorize. We'd have to update. So we wouldn't just come to you for committal of funds on some of these that are years old. And so we are working, and I'll be perfectly honest, some of them we were leaving on as kind of a placeholder, to show that, at least to show the legislature we had a need for funds in those accounts. Now that we're getting some of these larger projects, I think we'd be comfortable getting some of these old ones withdrawn. So we are working with some of those applicants, and that's why you've got 3 withdrawals in front of you today.
Okay.
And because one of them had even actually been committed. And so, so, so we are trying to clean those up a little bit, and hope to see some more in the next few meetings.
Okay, well, I know that question has been, and I've asked that question in the past. I know that there has been some effort on the part of staff to update that information. I guess a question that just comes to mind, notice on the projects authorized, number 9, Weber Basin is on that list, plus it's over on the additional future funding needs
Right.
list.
Right. And I'll tell you, Weber Basin is one, we've actually had chats with. Oh, it is in 2 places.
It is, that's why I was.
That's a mistake. I will mark that and get that fixed. And hopefully maybe next time we can just have that one withdrawn altogether. Because Weber Basin is an entity that like to submit applications for big multi-phase projects and then forget that they had some the board had authorized, and they'd just go build part of it by themselves. And so, but we will, Tom, I'm making a note right now. Sure.
The 7 million that's listed in the, under the C and D fund right now,
Mhm.
that 2007 date is kind of deceptive. That's when they first came before the board. There's been multiple phases, and I don't know how much better this makes it, but their last phase was in the 2017, 15 year-ish, so they have been using the money. As Shalane mentioned, we were kind of holding that for placeholder. At one point, we talked to them, and they were fine with us withdrawing that, the rest of the project, so that 7 million would go away. So we can do that. I'll contact them again and see where they stand.
Okay.
It was like Shalane mentioned, they gave us a wish list of their 5 to 10 year plan as far as funding goes. And we funded a lot of it, including the Willard Bay enlargement of water treatment plants and such for them. So they used the bulk of the money that the board authorized and committed.
Okay, thank you for that, for the clarification. And thank you, Shalane, for explanation on those. Are there any questions from board members relative to, and first of all, were you finished? Are there any questions from the board members relative to any of those funding sources? Okay, back to Candace.
Okay, so next up, I thought it would be good to have Joel go over a legislative update and kind of progress on some of the many legislative items that we saw this year.
Did you say many or many?
They're multiple.
I don't know if we can call any of them mini. The one that I wanted to focus mainly on, because we've done some legislative updates in the past couple of meetings, but there's one bill in particular that asks the board to adopt rules, and it is House Bill 269, capital assets related to water, sponsored by Kevin Stratton, and the Senate sponsor was Scott Sandel. They talk about capital asset management plans, and they talk about wastewater, drinking water, and then also conservancy districts. And so the interesting thing is, so they kind of talk about the wastewater, the division of wastewater, of water quality will handle those ones, and the water quality board will be involved there. And then the drinking water will involve the drinking water board, and that they will be able to make rules to talk about capital asset plans for retail water suppliers. But then towards the end of the bill, they mentioned the Board of Water Resources shall make rules to establish the elements of a capital asset management plan for a water provider that is a water conservancy district. And so the very next line of the bill also mentions that conservancy districts in section 17B 2A 1010 are not subject to this section. And those ones are basically the ones that have a revenue annual operating budget over $5 million. So basically the big four districts would not fall under this. So essentially, as I boil it down, they're asking the board to say, what should a capital asset management plan have in it for water conservancy districts smaller than the big four? And what I am going to recommend is that we take the rules that already exist, that are already in code for those big four districts. Say, hey, this is what they're expected to have in the capital asset management plan. And maybe we start with that, saying this is what, and maybe kind of say this would be the all-encompassing, comprehensive capital asset management plan. Do we want to make any changes to this as we adopt requirements for these smaller conservancy districts? And maybe looking at that, thinking, does it make sense to make some adjustments that maybe this would be a requirement that makes sense for these big districts that can dedicate time and staff to preparing these, and maybe for a smaller conservancy district, and you can picture your favorite smaller conservancy district wherever they're located. Try to picture what are they going to be able to do as far as staff hours and implementation on a capital asset management plan. And then looking at how often should these be updated. And so what I'll do is I'll take the existing code and we'll get that sent out to you and probably to some of the staff in some of the conservation plans that we already require, just to get a look at those and start that discussion of what would we think, what requirements would make sense for these smaller conservancy districts. If that sounds agreeable to the board, are there any questions or thoughts on that procedure, that maybe starting with the existing code for conservancy districts?
Any comments or questions for Joel? Sounds like a reasonable approach to start that process from, and as you provide that information to us, give us an opportunity to review it and provide feedback if need be.
Joel, I have one question. Who looks at these reports? I mean, it seems like me, you get into a situation where you're micromanaging capital assets of groups and organizations. So who looks at them, and why are they going through these hoops? Why?
So yeah, if I try to take the role of the sponsors here of the bill, which is probably dangerous, I think the idea is hoping that it's benefiting the water providers themselves. That if you're a wastewater provider, having a plan helps you to know these are our assets, this is what their value is. At some point, we're going to need to replace this treatment process, or we're going to need to replace these sewer collection pipes or this lift station, just to get them thinking, so that it's not, oh, surprise, this plant is now 20 years out of compliance, and suddenly you're scrambling to try to get bonds to rebuild your treatment plant. For the water retail providers, I think it's a similar story. Just hoping that, and ideally, they would already be doing this. They'd already know and have a plan for replacing all of their assets on a timeline of saying, oh, this is when this pipeline was installed. We probably ought to look at replacing, or this is the one that tends to have the most leaks. And they're doing that kind of planning. And I know some systems are, and we also know that there's some systems that aren't. And so I think that's probably the thrust of this bill, to try to get these systems to be looking at what are their assets and what's their time frame for replacing them, and to be planning for that. So who's reviewing them? I know Drinking Water and Water Quality do review those, because they work with those communities to try to help them with funding and saying, your plan is showing that in 10, 15 years, you're going to need to upgrade your treatment plant. We ought to start talking now about meeting our requirements, so that you can be ready for that when that time comes. And also, these larger projects take a long time to permit, to design, and to get implemented. So I know that they get involved. The districts have submitted to us their capital asset management plans, the big four. In all honesty, we haven't done a lot with them. I think we've looked through them just to get a feel for what kind of information they're providing, but we're not, they are the examples of those that have the staff, they're planning to know what needs to be replaced and when. So we're not really doing a whole lot as far as like following up. We may find that we want to take a little bit more of a role with some of the smaller ones, of just helping them as far as funding. Say, hey, we noticed in your capital asset management plan that you've got a big expense coming up in the next 5-10 years. You want to start working with the board on maybe filling out an application if you think you're going to need funding help, that we could maybe provide some assistance that way. But it's a great question, Wayne, that I don't think it's really for us, for our benefit. It's hopefully for their benefit, but sometimes that can be a hard pill to swallow. You're going to make me do this? Is it?
There's nothing in the statute that indicates who the reports go to. Could that be a possibility in the future that in order for them to seek funding, they would have to have that?
That is the requirement of this.
That is the requirement. So if they came to this board for funding and they didn't have that capital assets management plan completed, then they wouldn't be eligible to apply for funding. So that's kind of the carrot that's hanging out there to do that. And if they don't, then they, okay.
Well, just because I sit on Central Utah's board presently too, and I know that every month there is some capital asset thing that we need to address and try and cover, because some of our infrastructure is getting pretty old now. And so those capital assets are being assessed every month. And so I assumed in a well-managed situation, that was something that would be done anyway.
That's true. Mr. Chair, if I may, just a little bit of history or background on this bill. The original bill came out and it required all wastewater, drinking water, and water conservancy districts to submit a capital assets plan. There was some pushback from the broader water community, kind of echoing some of Wayne's points. So they changed the legislation that it's only if they come to either the Drinking Water Board, the Water Quality Board, or the Board of Water Resources for funding that are they required to have it. So it was modified to make that change.
The only other bill I'll probably mention for today is just the House Bill 121, the conservation modifications. This doesn't require rulemaking by the board, but it will require some rules as proposed by the division. We are still working on that, and I'm mostly saying this for the board's information and for any public that may be listening to this meeting, that it is something that we know there's a lot of interest in, and we are working to come up with a way that meets the requirements of the bill and is still partners well, I think, with some of the existing programs that are in place. We don't want this to come in and disrupt good efforts that are already going on. We want it to be something that does incentivize people to remove unneeded turf and replace it with water-wise landscaping. So, but we haven't yet come to what exactly that rule is yet. So that's the update I'll have, unless there's any other legislative questions.
Not a question. I'll just make a comment on Senate Bill 311 that removed the chairman of the Board of Water Resources and/or his designee, their designee, from the Community Impact Board. That took effect yesterday. And so the Board of Water Resources chairman and the chairman of the Water Quality Board are no longer members of that, of the Community Impact Board by statute. And because of the process that they called an emergency meeting last Friday, that the Community Impact Board met so that the current sitting board could dispense with the business of the projects that were being requested at that point, because they recognize that it not only is the new board appointments require governor appointment and Senate confirmation. And they figured that could take some time before they would have a new board in place to be able to consider any future projects. And so, again, just, I voiced my concern relative to that in this meeting, I think maybe in March, but also at the board, Community Impact Board, that I felt like the timing of the legislation of the change to remove those two water positions from that particular board was just short-sighted in the light of the fact that we're in historical drought situations. But anyway, that just an update that did take effect, and the new law took effect yesterday. So,
Mr. Chair, do you remember who the sponsor of that bill was?
I do. Senator Winterton.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to look it up. Thank you.
Senator Winterton and Representative Chu, I believe, was the co-sponsor in the House. Okay, continue on, Candace.
Thank you. And I just have a couple of more items. Just a update on the tour. So it is in the Provo River District area. So Wayne's area. And Ben Marett has been assigned to work on that tour. So that will be on September 14th, just the day before our September board meeting. So, and in conjunction with that, we will be doing kind of a big lunch kind of celebration for our 75th anniversary for the board. So really excited about that. And then one last update on the secondary metering grants. As you all know, the application period is open. It was open on April 1st and will close May 15th. So far, we've had about 15 applicants. We have applied for amount of nearly $100 million. It's 96 and change, so almost $100 million. So the total meters that will estimated be the total meters to be installed with this proposed applications is about 66,000. So we are getting a lot of interest, and we still have almost 2 weeks left. So that will be interesting to see how the next 2 weeks shape up. So those are the information I have for the board today.
What was the potential number of meters that would be affected by that? You indicated that there was 66,000 that are covered in these particular applications. What's the potential?
And I think that really depends on the costs that are coming in on each of the applications. So, in the past, we've seen costs around 1,500, and that's just not the way anymore. I think we're estimating closer to 2,500 to 3,000. So per
Joel,
meter.
did you have a?
Yeah, like I said, just depends on the cost. So it could be, if the end of cost proposals for 3,000 each, that's about 80,000 meters that the grants would provide, and then board provide, in addition to that, could get up over 100,000 meters.
So do we have a feel for how many potential meters there are that would eventually need to be metered?
Estimated 260,000 next year.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
15% of those are metered. So
Gotcha.
less than 160,000.
Wow.
And so a part of the secondary metering grant funds, we were appropriated money to hire 5 new positions to help with this effort, and that is underway as well. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Well, thank you. But just to carry on that thought a little bit, if the current funding, well, if there's 260,000 potential, and this is 66,000 and could be get up to 100,000, and the law requires that all secondary connections be metered by 2030. What's going to happen with the rest of those, and where's the funding going to come from to help meet the need there?
And I think that's a
Interesting
question
questions.
we're all asking. I actually did just hear back from the governor's office on the ARPA question, if you want me to go over that with you now.
Sure.
So the legislature left 100 million unappropriated, but this is in the ARPA Capital Projects Fund, which is a separate funding source. So he indicated that all the funds that could be used for water infrastructure have been appropriated.
Mm. So then they would have to petition potentially a change in that set aside money to be able to be used for a water project. Okay. Okay. Well, it's 11:05. Anything else you want to mention on the tour as far as any other than the date set for the 15th?
Yeah, I don't think
specifics?
we have any specifics yet. I will say, while Ben's been assigned, he's also been assigned to talk with Tom, since Tom has some pretty big projects in that area right now. So Tom didn't really want to put the tour together, but he was willing to help Ben in his efforts. So we should be able to see some pretty cool stuff in September.
Okay.
Oh, maybe just will add, we have, we're working on looking at the Deer Creek Pavilion for potentially the lunch. I did hear it was a little windy there, so we're considering that, but that is one of the locations that we are looking at for lunch and timely with the project too.
What's a little wind? We've dealt with wind.
Went to Bell site.
That's right.
Oh, yes, thank you. And I do have one other thing. David Gunther is our new GIS analyst. We tried to introduce him at the last board meeting, but technology was not on our side that day. So we're happy to have David and Aaron come up. And Aaron, will you please introduce him, and David can say hi too. Thank you.
So you'll get to meet him in person since we didn't get through that, but we're excited. For a few months now, David Gunther has been working with us in the technical services section. He's a GIS analyst, and he started on Valentine's Day. So we're excited to have him, and I think he loves water and loves being here. So
my apologies. I'll try and make this fast. Can you hear me all right? Sorry, I had a nasty cold yesterday, and it's kind of taken me out of commission a little bit. But let's see. But yeah, my name is David Gunther. I have been working for almost 3 months now here at Water Resources, and it's a great time. I love it. My role in Water Resources is mainly centered around keeping our open water data website up to date, and I am lended out to help out different sections as needed. Next week, I'll be presenting at a GIS users conference in Vernal, Utah, on some work I've been doing with our hydrology and modeling section. We've been trying to locate some salts that appears to be missing from a model. So I'm just trying to do some more modeling efforts to try and refine that salt. It's fascinating stuff, and it's a lot more interesting than my last job. So glad to be here.
Where did you come from, David?
So before coming here to Water Resources, I worked for Utah County in the recorder's office, and I did cadastral mapping for them. So I worked a lot with titles, and occasionally I would run across documents of water and send it off to our water rights specialist. So it's good stuff. I did my undergraduate at BYU, so it wasn't a really far change from there, and I'm chasing after additional graduate studies remotely for the University of Maryland. So
Nice. That's great.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, and I'm sure you'll be a great addition to the staff, and enjoy your time while working here. I shared with someone else this morning. I read an article this morning that there was a gentleman in Brazil who was 100 years old. He'd worked for the same company 84 years. He held the Guinness Book of World Records on being the employer working for the same employer for that period of time. So if you can last 84 years,
No pressure.
go ahead.
I'll do my
I have to add one other thing. David is a drone pilot, and so he's also been helping us look at potentially how drones could be used in our work, and potentially making some recommendations on getting a drone and being the pilot. So we are looking at that closely right now. So excited to share.
That would just be used in data collection efforts to support other sections in Water Resources.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Any other questions of David? Well, welcome aboard. Candace, any other last minute items?
Unless I missed anything.
Okay. Well, we're at a little after 11, and our board meeting doesn't start until 1. Lunch coming at,
I think it's at 11:30 usually, so we'll
I
have
think
just
that's
a
what
little
Randy
bit of
said.
time, and it'll be up in 314, and it is tacos.
I was going to say, if it's, if we're recognizing Cinco de Mayo, it should be taco type product.
Mr. Chairman, just to fill in a little bit of time, but I guess after this year's tour with Wayne, I guess the Bear River Basin is next up. So I want the board and staff to be thinking about whether they want to be at Bear Lake or Cache County or out at Grouse Creek on the Nevada border. So you can give me some ideas.
Well, those are some interesting contrasts. So, okay,
Depends on the time of year, right? So if it's fall, think about it.
okay. Well, Wayne, we look forward to coming down to Utah County and that area and that. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chairman, I so move. Second.
Been moved and seconded, doesn't need debate. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Randy. And Jim, if you're still on, we'll see
Yes.
you all back. Yeah, all right, we'll see you all back at 1 o'clock for the board meeting. Thank you.
Okay.